Welcome to Property Showcase, the podcast that brings you closer to the service providers that can inform your decisions about how you buy, manage and research top investment opportunities. Be informed and become a better investor with Property Showcase.
Well, g'day everyone and welcome back to another instalment of the Property Showcase. I'm your host, Tom Gilmore, media and marketing strategist here at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Guys, jumping into today's podcast, we are going to break down why understanding market categorisation is key to buying in this market. To help me break down what this actually means, I'm joined by a fan favourite here at the Smart Property Investment Show and a cast of people we like to come on board. He's the director of InvestorKit, a buyer's advocacy. He is also the host of one of the biggest and upcoming property podcasts out there at the moment called The Property Nerds. He is a Rising Star Award winner at the REB Awards, and he is also a Buyer's Agent of the Year finalist. Arjun Paliwal. Mate, how are you going?
Mate, I'm glad you accepted credit cards for that introduction there. I appreciate it. I wasn't sure I was going to pay you.
Oh, mate, I do love giving you a good intro. But, mate, it's impressive, obviously, what you've done. I've seen you start from very, very humble beginnings and look where you are today, mate. It's really impressive.
No, look, really, really appreciate it. And today, I think what you touched on with regards to market categorization is the most important point. We all know the market's hot. It is hot right now.
We bang on about it constantly every single day.
But the problem is, if you don't categorize this heat, you'll get this universal effect that everything's hot and you should attack everything with such, heat in your offer. And what that does is it kind of creates this false environment that everything is hot. And I don't believe that's the way markets should be looked at, because when markets are usually hot or cold, all it takes is Sydney and Melbourne to do well or not do well, and then it changes the whole country's data. Now, we're in a rare time right now where almost everything is quite hot, but we have to categorize it. And so why I wanted to touch on that is because I've been thinking about our own internal challenges within a buyer's agency business, about it's taking a bit longer to find someone something good, not just hot, but has to tick boxes. So when the things aren't as hot, how does it perform? But then also, how do we find different locations in better parts of the cycle so we aren't jumping well above listing on every single property? There's going to be cases where you have to do it because the underlisting tactics still are around, sadly, but it is what it is. But when I think of four categories, I think of these four, and I've named them in a certain way, and I'll explain what each of them mean. One is watch list. The second is early adapter. Third is the hotspot. And fourth is the second wind.
So I'm going to butt in quickly. Is that in that order? Is that these 4 points we want to break them down? Is this what people should be doing in this order? Watch list, early adapter, hotspot, second wind?
Totally, right?
Okay, explain the first one.
So I believe when you're putting markets into these different categories, and that first one in particular, watch list, there are two things we look for when researching markets. One is called causal factors, and the other is called market effect. So causal factors, if I break it down, it's essentially starting top level: demand, confidence, and supply. And they are the influences of markets. And so if we break down a few examples of demand: jobs, migration, movers and stayers, where people are moving around, population growth, infrastructure projects, lifestyle, resources, commodities, import, export, take up of credit. This is demand. And so this is probably the one that everyone gets stuck on, and they forget about the other two. And so this is where mistakes are made. But confidence, if we talk about that, we're now talking media. We're talking word of mouth, government policies and support, political environment, corruption, safety, education, household spending, employment makeup and security, specialized industry performance, emerging industries, innovation, global trends, demographic life stages. And then supply, building approvals, zoning, rezoning, land release, site consolidation, government stimulus, rules and regulations, the types of dwellings. So when we're talking about watch list, we're talking about these three things coming into some sort of harmony. The causal factors are moving well, but the market effect, the indicators, prices rising, days on market falling, the speed of selling becoming faster, vendor discounting falling, rents increasing. Those are what we now call the market effect. Those aren't showing in the watch list market, but the projects are there. The job creation activity is there. So this is a market where a lot is happening, but at the same time, it's not happening. And so this is where we see things that could influence a market, the influences, but we don't see things selling fast or anything just yet. So the watch list, hence the name, keep an eye on it.
Fair enough. Just a quick sort of stab here at you, mate, because you've listed quite a few things there. And if I'm the buyer or the investor tuning into this, where are you getting all this information, mate? Like, how do you know all this stuff? And I'd also be thinking, how do I get my hands on this type of information? Obviously, I want to give you a call, but is there something tangible I can get my hands on?
Look, there is. I mean, I've actually created a little bit of a process that outlines these bullet points that we're talking about. So happy to give away for free. I've got this in a one-pager document, so I'm not going to make it super boring and a whole brochure for people to look at. But if you want the indicators and influences of markets to check out, just drop me an email, arjun@investorkit.com.au, and that's ARJUN @investorkit.com.au, and myself or someone on my team will flick that out to you.
Okay, next point.
Now we're looking at what we call the early adopter. So this is the part where we switch over from influencers showing something good to now indicators, the market effect, not just the cause. So now we're moving from, all those demand, confidence, and supply, but now we're moving to a trend is changing. To give you an example, there was higher levels of stock this time last year than there are now. Rents were lower than they were this time last year than they are now. There were more vacant properties this time last year than there are now. So we're looking at trends. We aren't calling these hot locations. Now, to give you an example of a location, right, which I'll jump to in a moment, the key thing with early adapters is it's just starting. It's essentially the best part of a market to get into. You're seeing a whole bunch of good stuff in the pipeline of demand indicators. Confidence things that we talked about, those bullet points. Supply is fairly low, but at the same time, you have things that are now trending. That's a big part when you're looking at a market. And to give you an example of, some of those different market categories, just to say, hey, Arjun, what's an example of an early adopter market? Well, Toowoomba, Bundaberg, Victor Harbour, Mudgee, parts of Latrobe Valley, Townsville, Gympie, I could be pronouncing this horribly wrong, so I'm pretty sorry for those out there, and parts of the Hunter Valley region. Right, these are just some examples of regions where they are showing a lot of the pipeline, a lot of the watch list stuff is there. So the demand, confidence, and supply. Mm-hmm. But now they're moving into a movement of something's trending here. It's not super hot, but it's trending enough for someone to go, things are changing.
Yep. Okay. Interesting. I know a certain person who's actually tuning into this who's going to love what you said just there about Mudgee and potentially parks as well. But hotspot, mate.
Hotspots. So hotspots are markets where not only do we have the influences, but we now have the trending indicators, which we talked about on early adapters, but now they're hot. And so hot means all those trending data points of inventory levels, vacancy rates, days on market, sales volumes, listings, all of those things that we talked about. They're now not only trending in the right direction, but they're hot. So it means that it's not going to be the easiest to buy property here, put it that way. Mm-hmm. Many regions of Adelaide fall in this category. Many regions of Brisbane fall in this category. On top of that, you've got Wagga Wagga, Shepparton, Bendigo. You've even got parts of Warrnambool, Albury Wodonga is a maybe in that category. Wangaratta, Queanbeyan, Port Macquarie, Coffs Harbour. You've got these different locations that are sitting in these categories. And so they are essentially hot now. They are moving well, but the unique part about hotspots is that they have not had a substantial boom in the last 5 to 10 years. And this is why I mentioned Albury Wodonga could be in that maybe category, just because it has had a couple of years of solid growth. Mm-hmm. Bendigo is going to turn soon into the maybe, only because it's now had a year or two of picking up strong. But most of the other markets are only starting to show themselves in a full force and full momentum now, which are signs of some hotspots.
You make some pretty good points there, and I'm just recollecting some things in the back of my mind. I mean, you were talking about Bendigo, God, like over 2 years ago. I remember picking up the phone with you and we're chatting away. You're in different parts of the country and you identified essentially what is this hotspot a long time ago and was buying in those areas and buying for your clients. And it's like obviously a case-by-case basis, right? Now, we're not saying that it's necessarily had little growth or the most amount of growth. This hotspot is there for a reason. But your clients, and yourself included, have seen fantastic growth in the properties that you've bought in places like Bendigo. So
that's a really good point, because what you're talking about is the transition from an early adapter to a hotspot market. And essentially our goal is to get as many clients as we can into early adapter markets. And Bendigo is a perfect example. Our buying commenced there in 2019, and Ballarat, our buying commenced there in 2018. So you can see clients have either come up at least 30% better off in parts of Ballarat, and now we're clocking close to 15 to 25% better off in Bendigo. I loved it so much I jumped in there myself as well. Just in the heart of COVID, right? The biggest lockdown, the first one as well. My customer presented a property. They unfortunately missed out because of circumstances in their financial situation that changed as a result of COVID. But I believed in that much to say, hey, if they're not going to buy it, I'll buy it.
Which is the best philosophy. I think it's the best mentality to go about. If I was a buyer's agent, that's exactly what I'd be doing, mate. If you don't buy this, I will.
Well, I mean, it's just a belief, but also partially I missed out on my Ballarat. You know, I got a lot of my clients in there and I couldn't get into there, and I wanted to make sure I don't miss out again. And so that's where my purchase in Bendigo happened in the heart of lockdowns, and that's up.
Mate, you could almost call it your second wind, our fourth point.
Yeah. So second wind is a very interesting one, and this is going to challenge the thoughts of many investors right now, but also perhaps give some comfort to many investors. Now, I want to start off by explaining what the second wind is. History suggests markets don't and typically won't boom again and again and again within that so-called 10-year cycle that we keep talking about. You know, take Melbourne example and Sydney example, between 2012 and 17 had some of the strongest years of performance, effectively close to doubled in some areas. Now, when you look at those market movements, it's not very sustainable for that to keep happening every decade, or at least every 5 or 6 years like it did that time. And so when you look at the decade prior, Sydney was a pretty average performer. It wasn't all that great between 2003 to 2012. Take 2000 to 2003, it had great years, but other markets outperformed it substantially. If you had a property in Adelaide during that decade, Brisbane during that decade, you know, you can forget about performance in Sydney in that first decade. Mm-hmm. So what happens here is that, you know, markets are taking turns because you can't have growth at that level again and again, simply because wages aren't allowing them and credit take up in policy isn't allowing them for that given time of where wages are relative to it. Now, when we look at the second wind, this is the whole structural shift or a change that makes a market still perform even though it's technically boomed in the last 10 years, and you would go, hold on a minute, how? You keep questioning it. And so under the second wind, the key change I mentioned is what I call structural. To give you an example of a structural change, let's take my place in the northwest of Sydney in Glenwood. 4 years ago, if I had $1 million mortgage on my house in Glenwood, I would have been paying over $40,000 of interest. Mm-hmm. Today, if I want to refinance it, which I will very soon, the rates are phenomenal, $22,000.
What a difference.
Now, you can do a few things with that money.
Yeah.
You know, go buy a car, you know, more holidays, disposable money for your family, savings. So that's all the disposable bracket. And that's what they're trying to talk about in terms of the wealth effect and family security.
But what does InvestorU do with that money?
Exactly, right? Now we're talking. So InvestorU, and, you know, this is where people go, maybe I buy another house or investment property. Maybe I upgrade within the same suburb because I like the area. Maybe I renovate. Maybe I buy in a new area. And this is not just you thinking it. There's a lot of people thinking that. And so this is where, even though it sounds crazy, someone could effectively double their Glenwood home from $1 million or 1.2 in value, close to $2 million, and still see the same repayment that they were paying 4 years ago. This is where it gets pretty crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is all right. So, all right, keep going. I want more. All right.
So the second wind is about challenging that mindset to go, just when you thought price growth was mental, it may still happen, unfortunately, because I think now we're getting into some pretty crazy territory with some of these Sydney and Melbourne parts.
Certainly.
Where, you know, you've got the deposit, the ability to build a deposit in some of these markets is going to be close to impossible. And people are changing their appetite in many areas of where they invest, and they could make far better decisions for where their money goes as well. However, those who are saying Sydney won't grow, it's not true. It will be growing simply because a structural change has occurred, which allows someone to get back to their repayments that they were paying 3 to 4 years ago. Even half of that is a 50% growth. and they will still be able to afford it because we weren't in a country full of defaults of mortgages 4 years ago. So that is one second wind that can happen. Another second wind is behavior. Maybe people weren't as excited about Central Coast 2 years ago, but now Central Coast and New South Wales, now Sunshine Coast, even if they had grown, people are almost ignoring that they had a big boom between 2012 and 2018. Now, all of a sudden, Central Coast is having a huge last 12 months and likely to continue for the next 12.
You're telling me. I've been looking for houses in Central Coast, and it's quite hard.
There you go, right? Well, to give you some context, there's a suburb called Killarney Vale in Central Coast. It's halfway between your kind of Wyong and Terrigal.
Yep.
We were quite active there during COVID and purchasing for the sixes during that time in that region for 3-in-1s, some 3-in-2s. Now if I see a 6 on there, like, again, it's one of those I'll buy it myself moments because everything's with a 7 now.
No-brainer.
Exactly.
Just do it.
And so with the second wind markets, to shout out some examples, we've got Ballarat, Geelong, Sunshine Coast, Central Coast, Gosfords, Wyongs. And when I say these, I don't say the suburb, I'm talking about regions. Sydney, Mornington Peninsula now, pretty much all of Tasmania, Canberra, Newcastle, Wollongong, Orange. These are markets that have all had phenomenal house price performance, but irrespective of what someone says, they're likely to keep going simply because of the second wind. It does not mean that these are necessarily the best decisions to make because, it's a lot easier and a lot more comfortable to see something that's been slow changing and you jump into that rather than a treadmill that's running at full pace and you're trying to stay on it, right?
Correct, yep.
So this is where the whole concept of these second winds are to say, look, whether we like it or not, they're going to grow because of structural shifts in interest rates, policy, lending, behavior. But at the same time, they're not my favorite to buy in only because they have been having some growth already. And history suggests we shouldn't be following these markets too hard, but it's still likely to grow only because of what's happening now.
Absolutely. I'm just imagining the conversations you must have with people, particularly, future prospects or clients that you're having go, what about this area? And you've got to go through the whole formula again. But mate, it's a solid 4 points to follow. This is something you've been doing now for years. It's clearly working, obviously.
I mean, the key thing I find is the most respectful challenge I need to have with investors when working with them is because once we see the word growth, the market heat up, we immediately think we just need to have our feet planted in capital markets. Interestingly enough, the next 5 years, whilst are likely, based on all this growth, going to be good across many locations, our capital markets, most of them, are either in hotspot or second wind. There's almost little to no, other than perhaps your Perth, that you could throw into the early adapter, which is probably in the next 12 months easily moving to the hotspot. Mm-hmm. So as a result from here, you have to be more open than ever. So my goals right now has been strongly focused on respectfully challenging my clients' mindsets. And as stubborn as that sounds, I really want to make sure I keep pressing on it because the city, the population, the size of the economy, these aren't causal factors or impactors to capital growth. If you've got 5 people in an area coming in and it's the weakest population growth you've ever seen and 2 listings are there, I don't care how small the city is, it's going to grow. And as an investor, you need to be locked in on 4 things. Nothing else matters other than these 4 things. It grows in value, it's easy to rent, it rents for a good amount, and you don't have a headache while holding it. So to be honest, I don't care for the name of the city. I don't care for whatever it's saying or what the economy size of it is. I am looking at it from its causal factors, its market effect, its influences, its indicators, categorizing it in 4 buckets, and where does it show an early adapter or a hotspot, because the others are going to be a bit tough.
I think you make a pretty good point there. Well, I'm going to have to help you a lot here because not only are you just going to have to start challenging and opening the minds of your current clients, but you've basically just opened the minds and started challenging the investors and buyers who are tuning into this right now. And I suppose that sort of segues quite nicely into, mate, how can people get in touch with you?
If you'd like to know a little bit more about what we do, get in touch with us and, just see if we're a right fit to potentially work with you, check out campaign.investorkit.com.au. Just want to repeat that. It's campaign.investorkit.com.au.
Fantastic. And if obviously you've got a lot of stuff going on the side, you've got the property nerds, you're across a whole bunch of media these days. You're on the Smart Property Investment Show. We love having you on there with, of course, our host, Phil Tarrant. Mate, what can we sort of expect if we wanted to get some sort of tangible data off you, or if, just that sort of introduction to potentially not just calling you, but if, we've listened to so many points today, is there something I can get my hands on that I could use potentially this weekend or the weekend coming up, when I'm out looking at buying, or maybe I can test a theory? You've mentioned a lot of locations today. As you said, that would be challenging to people's minds. So can they get their hands on something that they could use as a bit of a theory or a bit of an assignment to the locations that they're looking at?
Yeah, so if you'd like a one-pager document that goes through 3 key things, all the market influences you need to have, the finger on the pulse for: demand, confidence, supply, all the market indicators and how you should view them of trending, snapshot, relativity, and the different layers, including many different research data providers that we're looking to get all this information. Just hit me up on email, Arjun, ARJUN, @investorkit.com.au, and me and my team will respond back with this one-pager for free. It's no cost. But if you'd like to get your hands on, hey, Arjun, sorry, I don't have time for all this work and I want to figure out where to go, what are the regions that are standing out? The Property Nerds, we are a data and research house, and we've put together a top 20 investing regions report. And you can jump on that and grab that from thepropertynerds.com.au. That's it.
And if you find it still too difficult, guys, we're going to include the links in the property bio of this podcast here, so you can just get straight into the links from there. Arjun, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this show, and it's always great chatting to you, mate. But, mate, until next time, I look forward to it.
Thank you, mate.
Well, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the Property Showcase. I am your host, Tom Gilmore, media and marketing strategist here at Smart Property Investment. Guys, today I want to dive into a topic around loss and opportunity. We're recording this podcast right at a time of a natural disaster in Australia that is going to be covering across the entire East Coast, more importantly, the areas of New South Wales and Queensland. It's affecting me personally, not just in my investment decisions, but also just as, I suppose, a property landowner as well. Obviously, there's a lot of disaster, whether it be livestock unfortunately passing away, to houses being taken down the stream, so to speak. But I don't want to necessarily look at this from a negative point of view. What I mean by loss is potentially people's sway or weight, I should say, into potentially buying in areas like Newcastle or areas like Coffs Harbour, real rural regions, or even all the way along the coast as well. To help me with this topic, I have a gentleman in the room with me who has just recorded a Smart Property Investment Show with our director, Phil Tarrant. The podcast was titled 8 Ways to Find a Bargain in a Soaring Market, and I really think you guys should tune into that after you give this a listen. Joining me is Lachlan Vidler. He is the director of Atlas Property Group. How are you going?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, thank you, mate. Very, very well. Well, as well as I can be, put it this way, upon recording this. I think after this, I'm actually going to go shoot off and basically get on the cleanup. So
I guess you got to do what you got to do. Hey, it's a terrible time for so many.
Absolutely. So out of curiosity, Lachlan, is this affecting you personally? Is this affecting your clients? Is this affecting the way you buy as a buyer's agent?
I mean, for me personally, no, it hasn't. Thank God. I mean, we don't wish ill on anyone, but, fortunately for me, it hasn't come too close to home. I think a few of our clients, not property investment per se, but a lot of them have homes up around areas that might have been affected by this sort of unprecedented flooding. And then I guess, from what we do as a buyer's agency, it certainly plays into it. I mean, I think most people, when they look to buy a property, they look at flood zones, or they should anyway, and things like that. But I think that some of the flooding that we're seeing now, it's so unprecedented that it's not going to be on any maps. It's not going to be able to be prepared for so many people. And unfortunately, it's sort of one of those freak disasters that you do your best to plan for, but you can't necessarily foresee.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball for many reasons, not just property investing, but at the same time, how are we supposed to know this is going to happen? I think it was objectified. It was about 50 years ago something like this happened. I mean, that's a long time. How do you prepare for something like this? But Lachlan, what I want to do in this podcast is as I said, the title of the SPI show you did was the 8 Ways to Find a Bargain in a Soaring Market. I actually want to pick just a few of those points out and actually make it a little bit more relatable to potentially people investing in, areas like the Hunter region, all the way up New South Wales coast, all the way into Queensland, which is areas that of course, you work in. I'd sort of want to dive into a few of these topics. And number one is getting educated. What does that mean?
Well, as we sort of talk about in the other show, for me, I sort of see it two ways. Firstly, you got to get educated on investing in general. You got to understand the fundamentals of what an investment is and risk return, things like that. And that goes across property, shares, bonds, whatever you want to talk about. It's the basics of investing. And then the other piece is you then want to get educated on property investing specifically.
And in terms of getting educated with a natural disaster in a property, is there much you can do about that? Or am I just solely relying on the expertise of Lachlan Vidler here?
I think for some things, of course, you can. When you're buying a property maybe near a river or near a water body, nowadays especially, you might want to think about climate change, things like that. There might be impacts that could be happening, today as we're seeing, or it might be in 5 or 10 years' time. So you can do a bit of diligence, I guess, around that and a bit of educating of yourself to look at how close you might be. Obviously, you've then also got your standard things like flood maps or fire zones or things like that. But there's also just that part that comes with investing, and that's that get educated on investing in general, that there's some risks that you just cannot mitigate and you cannot necessarily foresee and you cannot plan for in its entirety. And I think that's what's really difficult. I think some people would say, oh, well, when we have a property, maybe we've got a little kitty to the side that we have for repairs and things like that. And, now that kitty might be getting used for fixing flood damage or, maybe looking at different ways to change a property to be a bit more natural disaster resistant. And that's maybe the most that somebody can do, because sometimes these things, you just can't see them coming.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I suppose that sort of ties into risk analysis, which I imagine sort of sitting down and having a bit of a yarn with yourself, I could probably get to grips on some of those areas, but don't grill me after this in terms of where these houses are. But that also sort of ties in with setting goals and objectives. If I say to you, hey, Lachlan, I want to invest in, Edgeworth, Newcastle. Is that a good decision? Is that a good idea? What would you then say to me?
I'd say I love the question, because so many people come and say that exact question, but change the suburb name or change the region name. And it's one of those things that everyone sort of thinks or says at one point, like, is this a great spot? Should I do it here? And unfortunately, the catch-all answer is maybe yes, maybe no. For some people, if you want to build a $10 million portfolio in 2 years, you're going to have to take on a lot of risk, and therefore your objectives and your goals are going to be very different versus somebody who has a bit more of a long-term outlook. Well, maybe a property in a suburb like Edgeworth, it does fit and it could be good for you. So it's hard to just give a catch-all answer. And I think that that's where, if you don't necessarily have the expertise yourself to understand how to get somewhere. Everyone can set their goal, but if you don't have that expertise yourself to set the pathway to get there, that's when you might look at talking to somebody like a buyer's agent or a financial planner or somebody like that can come in and help you and actually map that out and tell you, is this achievable? Is this not? And then things like, is this suburb appropriate for me? Well, then you're going to have your answer.
Yeah, absolutely. How does that sort of tie in? Because you said the goal obviously quite nicely. How does that tie into the objective of what you're seeking? Do you think a lot of people get that wrong, or maybe 50-50? How does that sort of tie in with you?
I think that it can often be misunderstood. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. And somebody might say that I have goal and objective around the wrong way, or there's a different word for this. But I think ultimately for me, the objective is the long game. That's where you want to get to. That's that I want X million dollars. I need X amount of passive income. I want to do this. I want to do that. That's your objective. And the goals are the things that you need to hit along the way to get there.
So that sort of ties in quite well, I should say, into the next point here that you've got out of your 8 ways is finding the right location. A lot of people can get obsessed with locations. I just pointed one out to you before. I just said Edgeworth. Now, you could have all the right things in place, but completely wrong location. Or when do you know you should change or give up? Or what if a flood happens? This sort of ties into the topic that I wanted to sort of tackle with you is, do you think this natural disaster is going to affect people's mindsets on where they're actually investing? Because, like I said, it's been 50 years, and watch what happens in a few years' time. People will forget. People do. And a market may potentially drop in a place like Newcastle or Maitland or whatever it is because of this flood zone. But when do you consider changing the location? Or maybe it's the right time to jump into that location. That's what I would be thinking.
I think it's a question that everyone would love, because it's almost that crystal ball scenario. When do you get in? When do you get out? What's enough? What's not enough? And I think, you have to do as much research, as much due diligence as you can, as much education, your goal setting, everything that we talk about, that we're talking about here today, and everything that we talk about in the SPI show. You have to do all of it and combine it. And that's when you also would bring in your trusted team of partners, your buyers agents, your financial planners, everyone else to come in. And unfortunately, I don't think you're ever going to come to the clear answer of yes, let's get out, or no, let's stay for a bit longer. But you make the best decision you can with all the information combined, so that, when you leave, I think anyone, if you bought a property, you keep it, say 10 years, the typical 7 to 10 year property cycle, you keep it 10 years, the property then doubles and you go, all right, I'm going to jump out now. Well, sure, the property could then double again in the next 2 or 3 years, but you've already doubled your money. At what point is enough? And at what point do you go, we've had a really good run, we've achieved our goal, which was part of the journey to the objective, we're moving on to the next stage.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Not too much, but I'm curious into the way you think about things. Obviously, case-by-case basis with anyone who gets in touch. And I really implore everyone to get in touch with Lachlan. We've got a bit of a grab for you at the end. Obviously a flood has just happened, right? Let's pick Maitland out of the hat. As I said, some people may be swayed to shy away from Maitland because of what's happened. Is that then an opportunity? Or perhaps, let me rephrase that again. What if the property prices in that region go down because of this region, or because of obviously what's happened? Would you see that as an opportunity?
100%. No matter where you go, if somebody could tell you, I'll sell you this property and the land attached with it, and say it's, 1,000 square meters in an area that, it might be flood prone, but it's in a very nice location, and I'll sell it to you for $1. Well, why wouldn't you? It's a great deal. I think it's sort of like you said, it's that everyone's circumstances are different, but if you can get a great price, or you can get great terms, you can make a deal work basically, well, why not? You're obviously then going to be looking for an extra bit to compensate for the risk, whatever that might be, whatever that extra bit might be, whether it's price, whether it's maybe, there's interesting ways to do a deal. Maybe you say, all right, I'll buy a property from you, but I want 6 months settlement period. And over that 6 months, maybe do some development on it, and you get that all approved, and then you on-sell it again. And that's how you make your money. There's opportunity everywhere, regardless of disasters that might happen, but it's all about matching that return with the risk you're going to take on.
Absolutely. Well, this ties into the last point I want to tackle, and this is something I think to reaffirm in terms of obviously what you do as a buyer's agent and how you buy, and obviously working with people individually or, as a couple, whatever it might be. But you do it quite well with your clients, is due diligence.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, the due diligence part is where you're sort of now right down at the property level. Like the due diligence at the suburb level, that's when you're getting educated. That's when you're doing your suburb search. But the due diligence on the property component, that's where it's so important, because if you followed the 8 steps that we talk about in the SPI show, by the time you're getting down to that due diligence part, if you follow the process correctly, well, you're not going to have any worries about the suburbs. So then it's purely just about that property that you're looking at. And what people are at the moment, especially, putting the natural disaster that we're sort of seeing at the moment aside, what we're seeing is that there is just unprecedented levels of owner-occupied demand, which is fueling massive growth across the country, massive growth. And what comes with that is you have to act quickly. So you have to be able to do your due diligence. And as we talk about in the SPI show, due diligence, or sometimes it's quick diligence, that, you have to have your whole team ready to go. If you're buying this for an investment, you've got to have your property managers on standby to give you your rental appraisals immediately. You've got to have your building inspectors and pest inspectors there at a moment's notice to go and do your inspections, whether that's pre-putting in an offer or whether that's during the settlement period where it might be conditional. You've got to be ready to go. And there's obviously other things that come with that, like your mortgages, or maybe you're doing developments, so you want to have your town planner ready to go as well. But the point is, you've got to go quickly. And if you're not ready to do that yourself, that's when people, experts like buyers agents like myself, are there to help. Because if you don't have the team assembled, you're not used to doing it. If you're not doing it day in, day out, that's why so many people are missing out today, because you're not moving quick enough.
Or not following the process correctly. Obviously you and I have talked about this off air quite a bit. It's that if there is some inkling where you're getting to the end where it is picking up the phone, or you're on the phone, or you're having self-doubts or any doubt and basically just means that you haven't followed the process right.
Absolutely.
You should have absolute confidence in what you're doing if you followed your steps.
I couldn't agree more. That's sort of what I was alluding to at the start of this part of the chat, which was by the time you're assessing a property, you shouldn't be looking at, oh, is this suburb right for me? Or do I have my mortgages ready to go? Because you should have done that earlier. And if that's the thing that's holding you up and delaying you, it's exactly like you just said. You haven't followed the process properly. And that's why you're going slow. And that's why you're missing out. And that's why you'll keep missing out. I mean, sure, this sort of booming period we're seeing, which I don't often like to talk about, Australia as a whole or Sydney as a whole, because there's so many markets. And I think a lot of the listeners know that there's about 15,000 plus suburbs, and each suburb is effectively its own market. So talking in big grand terms like Sydney is not good, but right now, pretty well Australia-wide, everything is firing, everything is going, which is why it's so hard. And not following the steps, not being prepared, it's just putting you back and it's making it more difficult. And that's why so many clients that I'm seeing at the moment are literally coming with that story. Oh, we've bid for 3 properties, we've missed out at auctions, we've done this, we've done that. And they're coming and they just feel so defeated because of how it is right now. And it's actually a little bit hard to listen to sometimes because the stories are just, you just feel, feel for these people. Like all they're trying to do is get ahead, make a better life for themselves. And they're not able to do it because it's just such a tough market right now.
Yeah, every week, every month, every step is just like further and further and further away. I know it all too well, mate. I was going through it. So, but that's a pretty good incentive for people to get in touch. And for everyone tuning in, if you like Lachlan's method in terms of the way he does things, please listen to a little bit more of what he's got to say on the Smart Property Investment show we did quite recently called The 8 Ways to Find a Bargain in a Soaring Market. It relates very much to what is going on right now, and he'll break down those steps for you in quite a granular manner too. But Lachlan, how do people get in touch with you, mate? You told me before you got a bit of an incentive for people to get in touch. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I was just talking about, with such tough markets at the moment, we're really looking to help our clients. It is a business, but we're here to help our clients. So what we've got on at the moment is for the first 5 people who get in touch with us, and you can get in touch via our website, which is atlaspropertygroup.com.au, or you can, send us a message on our social medias like Facebook, Instagram, but get in touch with us. And for those first 5 people, not only are we going to take you through the discovery call and strategy session absolutely free of charge, but for those first 5 people, if they end up coming on as a client with us, we're actually going to give them 10% off our normal price for the service.
Mate, that's absolutely unreal. I might have to do it myself.
Come along, mate.
Absolutely. So if that isn't enough for you, finding it a little bit too difficult to find all those little different avenues to get to Lachlan at Atlas Property Group, you can actually find him all the way across the Smart Property Investment website. You can find him when you're just reading stories. You can listen to his EDMs that come through the podcast. You basically have no excuse. But Lachlan, thank you for joining me, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate. It was a pleasure to have a chat.
Thank you.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.